Oh, Mike White.
That was funny.
That's cool, Mike Drop. That was a cool. Well, welcome everybody to our very first episode of our podcast. My mother-in-law is in the house. She says podcast. Sometimes we misunderstand each other, but that's the nature of this. I guess we're in-laws, and we're going to talk about the in-laws and outlaws of mind and faith, fusing the power of mental health and spirituality. Mary, hello there.
Hi, Josh. How are you?
Today is a hurricane day, but there's peace in the eye of the storm, I tell you what. We're going to talk about that.
What a day to start our official podcast together with Hurricane Hillary. Yay.
Let's change things up. Let's make a bit of a mess, because like our life in some ways has been a bit of a mess, but we can turn that mess into a message is what I'm saying.
I agree. I'm so glad to be here. Living in purpose on purpose is what I have come to in my life. So I want to spread that goodness and kindness and letting people know that you can deal with things and through God, with God, and because of God. So I am excited to talk with you, my son-in-law, and it makes me think of the shirt I made you guys, all my son-in-laws, that they're living the dream because they have an awesome mother-in-law. That was the shirt's words, not mine, but I love the sentiment. So yeah, take it away, Josh. What do you think? Let's go.
At some point I will bring that shirt out and wear it on the podcast. You see, as a son-in-law, sometimes you have to take one for the team, but
That's right.
That's what we're doing. We've got this interesting relationship. I mean, we come from two different continents, two different even ethnicities, faith backgrounds, ways of understanding mental health, and yet we've both been through these pretty gnarly mental health experiences. And the commonality is that God guided us not only through those, but led us to join each other in this kind of mission that is beyond us. So I think this episode, we've decided that we're going to tell our stories because we're not here by accident, and our lives so far have led up to this point. So if it's cool with you, I'll kick us off and then we'll pass on to you. Yes. So I was born and raised in Cape Town, South Africa, the land of 11 official languages, the Rainbow Nation. And I couldn't be content until I explored what was out there. So I traveled the world for like 10 years. But I tell you what, the most interesting place I ever explored was the mysterious and treasure-filled place of my own mind, the human mind. I discovered that the line between the inner world and the outer world is not as fixed as we're sometimes told. And so I had my first experience of so-called psychosis when I was 22, living in San Francisco. And I'd been fascinating with the realm of the mind and the nature of reality. And I also was raised Catholic, but I never thought any of it was really relevant to my life. I was a little altar boy and I did catechism and all of that, but Jesus was more this person I called on if I heard that there were sharks in the water. I'm a surfer. I was like, Jesus, help me. I just put him back in his box. But it was actually through smoking weed that box got smashed to smithereens. And when I was 22, I fell into a portal in my mind, which made all of the biblical worldview come to life. And my goodness, was it enchanted. It really just blew all my paradigms out the water. I was with my brother at the time, and I could read his mind. And he said that I was reading his mind verbatim. I could know when my phone was going to ring and who was calling. I was accessing these kind of prophetic abilities. And then after about an hour of that, I climbed out the rabbit hole and was like, what on earth was that? My mind was blown. And so for the next 10 years, I became obsessed in a way with researching this stuff, researching the world of the mind and the spirit. So I read the Bible for the first time, front to cover. And then I read this New Testament through another 7 times in the next 6 months. And what I discovered is that these things happen all the time in the Bible. Most of the prophets were mystics. So that was interesting to me. It started to change my world a little bit. But then I got a little bit scared by weed and the dimensions of consciousness it puts us in touch with, because things started to get dark and I got these darker downloads. So I stopped smoking weed for 8 years and I got my bachelor's in psychology because I'm fascinated with the world of the mind. And I moved to the land of the free and the home of the brave, and it started my master's in theology. I was actually in seminary. I met your daughter and we'd had your first granddaughter. When I was in seminary, I felt like God was leading me to smoke weed one more time now that I was so well educated in psychology and spirituality. Not so much. I absolutely lost the plot again. This time in the mountains of Crestline, I pierced through the veil again and fell so deep down Alice's rabbit hole that I stayed there for a month and a half, despite not touching substance again. It was like I was being guided by these forces, these synchronicities. And I came to believe I was the next version of Jesus Christ himself, which is common within bipolar 1. Was diagnosed bipolar type 1, but also arrested twice. I was involuntarily hospitalized against my will 6 times. I blew $86,000 in these states of consciousness. I made an absolute mess, and I really caused deep hurt and rifts in relationships. And after that, I fell into this powerful, deep existential depression where I couldn't do anything for 7 months. I had to quit my jobs. I dropped all my classes at school. It took everything I was to push our newly born daughter around the block. And at that point, I thought, this is going to suck. What, I'm going to live the rest of my life like this? I don't even necessarily want to do that. And then it was through discovering other people's stories, kind of like we're sharing with you guys who are listening, by the way, thanks for being here, that I discovered there's a different way of understanding these things. There could be a spiritual way of understanding these things. And so I researched it. I decided to leave LA and move back to San Diego, got back into surfing, started working with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And since then, oh my word, God has taken the reins. I had to ditch weed. I had to ditch the substance because I realized that it's deceptive and there were these trickery, like these trickster spirits involved. And so after I've cut out these things of the flesh, I've discovered this powerful meaning and purpose. I get to be a public speaker, and I work with Interfaith and the National Empowerment Center, these organizations that are changing the perception on mental health. And so it was really rough for you, I know, as you were going through that and trying to support your daughter. None of us really knew what was going on. But it has brought me what's called post-traumatic growth, that coming out of a trauma even better than you were before you went into it. It's not like we just get back that same life we had. No, there's fresh meaning and purpose, vitality, opportunity that has come through going through the growth process. I mean, we can talk in another episode about all the different biblical stories that echo that, but that's kind of how I found myself in this chair, Mary. What about you?
Wow, that's I've never heard you articulate it like that before. So that was wonderful to hear. And again, that's why we're here, because just something I had to jot notes of: post-traumatic growth. That is something you and I have. I have a post-trauma, and I'm not going to go into details of the trauma, but for whatever reason, when I had a couple of traumas in my childhood, and one of them I will say out loud: when I was 8 years old, I was molested by my great uncle. And back in my parents' day, everything was swept under the carpet. It wasn't said out loud. So they knew that this person coming to our house was a pedophile. And so my uncle was watching out for us, but because pedophiles they know what they're doing, he was able to take me outside to the backyard. And there wasn't any penetration, but it was still considered molestation, but I didn't know that. And it's something that I found out that I blocked out because nothing was said. My uncle came out and said, "Mary, come inside and come in the house," and nothing was said. But I just had trauma, and it was swept on the carpet, and I didn't talk about it. So it was blocked out of my mind till I was 35 years old, or in my early 30s. And I was at a jury, and the pool for the jury was a man who was convicted of, or being alleged of, molestation. And so that brought out, the judge says, if there's anyone who has anything to say before we decide the jury pool, you can raise your hand and talk to me. And so I raised my hand because I just realized I was molested when I was 8 years old in a courtroom, being on a jury pool. So that was, in and of itself, it was like, I'm in my early 30s and just realized I had been molested when I was 8 years old, because he didn't know that I thought it was just sexual penetration that was molestation. No, it's anything of that nature is molestation. And I'm like, wow, that was huge. So it led me to what I call the dirty man syndrome, because when when a man would approach me and touch my breasts, I would just go numb. And that happened to me at least 5 to 10 times in my adult lifetime, especially in the Army. That happened like 5 times in the Army. And I didn't realize this until I was in my 30s. So what happens and what affects us, it stays in our brain, and you have to recognize it to move forward. And it lends credit to what is happening in your life, because past does matter. It makes decisions in your brain that you don't even know. And so that's the trauma. The other trauma is for what it's personal, so I'm not going to share the details, but what it ended up doing is that I felt like I wasn't valued even by my own family, and I felt like I wasn't good enough. So my whole adult life, and ever since I was 14 years old when that trauma happened, I felt like I wasn't good enough. So I kept trying to search for, how can I be good enough? Oh, if I do this and check this box, oh, I'll be good enough. If I do this and I check this box, that'll make me good enough. And if I did, but that box never ends. It never ends. And so by the time I was 19, I joined the Army. I had already tried to kill myself because of things that happened. I couldn't cope. The littlest things would send me into orbit, and I didn't know how. And I believed in God. And so there was a happening in the Army. I got married. I married a man. 3 months later, he discharged out of the Army and said, I don't want to be married anymore. And that's the first time I tried to commit suicide, because I couldn't understand the pain. Why did someone not want to be married to me anymore? There must be something horribly wrong with me. So that set up my adult life, that there's something horribly wrong with me, and I need to fix myself, because I'm the only one that is feeling this. And I'm so thankful to God that I learned that that's not true. And that's why I'm here. I found out through God's help, through God's guidance, through the most wonderful counselors. And what led me to that, when I was 35 years old, I remember watching TV. Colin Powell was our Secretary of State. His wife came on and said on a news channel, I suffer from depression and anxiety, and I am working through it. And when I heard that, all the bells and whistles and lights went off. And I'm like, you mean prestigious people of stature go through that? It's not just me who's this low life person I thought I was, and trying to scramble. So that was God's message to me, that I could go get help. And I did. And then that opened up doors. And of course, when you're just beginning something, there's more avenues. And I'll share that as we go on. There was some more trauma that I had to go through as an adult. And I'll share that in our next talk, because it's important going through things and sharing it with others, and making people like, you are not the only one that suffers through anxiety, depression, or whatever else there is that's labeled for us, but you know something's not right. And then God's door and avenue, and how he put people at the exact time I needed them to be there. So that's my message. And that's the start of this, and sharing with my son-in-law, who he just shared all the things. My daughter was his wife, and the two precious grandbabies. So that's our connection. God put us together. We're family. We are now family. He's not just a person from South Africa who came into our life. He's our family now. And so hugs, right? But boy, it wasn't as easy as it is saying it right out of my mouth, because I had some resentment, and I had to give it to God. God, take this resentment. Let me see him as my son, not just my son-in-law. He's our family. Help me help him. Help me help my daughter and those two grandbabies that are, one of them's my mini me. You'll find out later who that is. and just the joy of family. And so that's where I'm at. I'm here to share goodness and kindness to everyone I meet. And I hope I get to meet a lot of people here through this avenue. I want to share that my life is blessed. And I'm so grateful to God that He did not give up on me, that I am in the palm of His hands always. And I finally learned that not too long ago. And I want to hope and share that with everyone, that you are in the palm of Jesus's hands always. So that's where my story is beginning, and we'll share as we go on, Josh. So where do we go now?
Everywhere. And everywhere to go within the world of the mind. That's so cool, Mary. Like, I hadn't heard you describe it like that either. Your story and your take, and even how you were processing what I was going through, that God, please help me to see Him as my family. And it is how it breaks apart the world that we thought that we knew. I mean, the world that you thought growing up, when you were in that jury court, it's like, oh, wait, this adds a whole different twist to my whole past. And so we're blessed that we're sitting kind of in the post-traumatic growth phase. It's not a one and done deal. But for
No.
those who are listening, in the midst of it, in the midst of our depression, in the midst of when Mary was going through things, I couldn't see the light. I didn't know that things were going to get better. And so, like how you shared about Colin Powell's wife, that other people go through this and other prestigious people go through it. I mean, so many geniuses throughout history have gone through these mental health challenges. We're talking like Isaac Newton, Nikola Tesla, Carl Jung, Kanye West, Mariah Carey, Jim Carrey, Lady Gaga, William Blake, Van Gogh. These are really influential people. So because maybe you're listening, you're going through some hard times, that doesn't make you less than. In fact, maybe by learning how to process this, you can unlock your genius. And also to know that you're not alone. Like, we've been through it, and there is the possibility of growth, even though it seems dark at a time. What do you reckon, Mary?
Well, yeah, and I'm going to backtrack really quick too. Who am I? I want to tell you who I am. I'm a mom of 4 children. I am a grandmother of 6 grandbabies. That is my 4 kids are like, what about us, Mom? Well, I had 18 years with them, and the joy of being a grandma is like no other. It is the best thing. One of my friends gave me a little block poster thing that said, the best moms get promoted to grandma. Well, I don't think I'm the best mom. I'm the luckiest and God bless mom to be able to be a grandma, because there is nothing like that joy. It's a whole different, I call them my bucket fillers, because whenever I'm sad, that's who I go to. And I get to FaceTime them. And as soon as I see them, they bring me the most joy you can ever imagine. So there is joy in grandmotherhood. It's the best club. All the grandmas I know, we're in heaven. It is nice to see the offspring. And, now that I'm in a great place and God has put me in a good place, and here's where I know I have to be of service and share the goodness and the gratefulness, because I am so blessed right now, and gratitude got me there, and kindness got me there. And that's through God's gratitude, the gratitude that He's shown me. Like I know I can be thankful because of I am a child of His. That's first and foremost. And then kindness. When and I'm a teacher. I also want to say I'm a teacher. So I could be called prestigious maybe, but also I know I was put to be a teacher through God to share with others. And I've had that experience to already help some moms who I can see myself. Yeah, I struggled. It's okay. So I can hold their hand through God and say, I got you. It's okay. It's going to be okay. I know, because I was there. So that's all I wanted to share again. And I know we're getting down to our end of our time for this time, but I can't wait to explore more and talk more topics with you, Josh, and help others like we have been helped.
That's it. Well, that's actually even what the Bible says. It's like, through the suffering, you found the comfort that comes from God. And with that same comfort, you can comfort others. And so it's amazing that you, within your teaching role, have managed to find that meaning and that purpose. And it's shifted your whole identity. Like, you felt like you weren't good enough until your identity shifted into finding your identity in God. And that is a game changer right there. So yeah, thanks, Mary. This has been an awesome opening intro. And then we're going to share the practical tips as well. Like, what are the actual
Right.
strategies that help with things
Right.
like depression and anxiety, with psychosis? What helps with finding meaning and purpose in your life? What role does God play? So God bless you, my mother-in-law. I'll catch you for the next one. Whoa! Oh, mic drop.
That was funny.
That's cool, mic drop. That was a cool